All right, we'll call the meeting to order. We'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Deb, would you do a roll call, please?
Slade,
Present.
Emily, Cody,
Yep.
Doug,
Yes.
Kyle.
Yep. All right, we need a motion to approve the agenda, but do we have an amendment?
One amendment to the agenda. We got under the consent agenda, letter D, the hiring of Melinda Penner for the position of FFA advisor for the 2021-2022 school year.
Great. Any other amendments? All right, hearing none, then I would accept a motion to.
So moved.
to agenda.
Second.
Motion by Cody, second by Slade. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Any conflict of interest disclosures?
I did not hear anything.
Public input?
There were none.
Okay. Consent agenda. We need a motion to approve the following. Minutes of the regularly scheduled school board meeting for November 8th. 2021 minutes of the Corn Belt Cooperative Board of Advisors meeting for November 17th, 2021. The financial reports. Hiring of Melinda Penner for the position of FFA advisor, and claims for December. Any discussion? Would anybody like to make a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Cody, second by Slade. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Administrative reports.
We will not have an elementary report this evening.
Okay.
There is one, she's
Oh, sorry.
not
Yeah.
out loud.
Stand corrected. Katie will be giving the elementary report. Sorry.
I'm just going to do the meeting report, which I.
You're not gonna report on the
I'm just
report?
gonna be quiet.
If you have questions, you can ask, but I'm not going over that. No, if you have questions, you can ask. Okay, I'll keep going.
Okay. And then high school, yes, Katie, please.
All right, so mine's just really a lot of thank yous to a lot of things that happened, but a big thanks to our teachers. They are working really hard right now. I know that it's not easy with COVID and subs and all those things, so I appreciate that. I appreciate our students also for working through those academic studies. We did have a blitz day on November 24th. That was that early release day, so we had a blitz day that day, so all the students that were on the list could come in and get working and do that, while the kids who weren't got movie and popcorn and those kinds of things, so that was good for them to kind of work through that. And then on that same day, we actually had Ava Ammon do her scrubs camp, so it just kind of all worked out perfectly that day, and that was good for our students. They could sign up for that, and it was here working through that. I told you that I would let you know more about that scholarship fund. So that's the Owen and Betty Kaufman Scholarship Fund. It's still in the works. We're working right now with the trust agency to kind of go through what we need to be able to offer that to some students. So that will be coming up. I'll keep updating you on that as we get through that. We have 2 more students coming sometime this week. We will be offering 2 new courses to it'll be for our seniors only this year. And that will include 2 CETE courses, internship, which means that they can go out and actually work in the public with somebody or some company. We're going to work alongside of the Department of Labor with that. They kind of offer some programs too, and they're going to help us get those students in if they are interested in that. And then also a service learning, which is more of a volunteer and more of in the school type setting. For those 2 courses, those are both CTE courses. Mrs. Sage has agreed to be the teacher of record on those. And we're going to do those with the seniors this year and just see how that goes. Honestly, we have some seniors with a lot of study halls in their scheduling, and so we want to provide them with some learning opportunities. And so we thought that this might be a good route to go, and it doesn't require us to hire any staff in order to do that. So we're going to try that and see what that looks like. Our staff completed the 2nd training for NWA math testing. The next training will take place in February. A big thanks to our music department and our students. They did a great job at our joint Christmas concert on the 9th. That was great, right before the giant snowstorm, so that was good. And I say giant because that's the most snow we've had all year, so. A big thanks and a job well done to our fall coaches and athletes. They did a good job. They represent our district well. ended their seasons on a great note, so it's good. I'm excited to see how those carry forward next year. Our winter sports are off and running, so best of luck to our coaches and our athletes in the winter season. And then a big thank you to all that supported the local blood drive we had here for Lily Whip. That was a successful day of donations. And then, you know, our challenge is always finding substitutes, so I will continue to plug that. If you know anybody that loves kids and wants to come in and sub, we are hiring subs anytime, so send them our way. A couple of events, we're doing our 12 days of holiday cheer, so just something to kind of be positive in school during this time. It's not, you know, it's a good time of year, but it's not always happy for everyone, depending on kind of what their life situation is, so just doing some dress-up days, allowing some jean days for our staff, and then just some fun treats in the office and trivia for our students and some treats for that, so that's been kind of fun. Tomorrow, Madison May will have a guest speaker in, Tracy Taylor. She's coming in to speak to the students for about 10 minutes. Her senior project is over addiction, so just what does that word mean in general? So she'll be here for about 10 minutes to speak tomorrow. And then Trevor Mulholland, his senior project was over bullying, and he's going to present that to our middle school, high school students on Wednesday at 8:15. And then our seniors will be doing their senior projects for capstone on the 17th from 8:30 to 12. Doug, I believe you are a judge for that, is that true?
Yes.
And then we'll have a few other judges. Anybody else be a judge for that? No? So thank you for coming in to do that. And then on that same day, we're going to have our staff appreciation Christmas meal at 12. Just something the administration provides for our teachers for a little Christmas present, a little holiday send-off. And then semester tests will be on Monday the 20th and Tuesday the 21st. We will allow open campus for our 12th grade students. If they have an opening in their semester test schedule, that letter will be coming home tomorrow. And then Christmas break will be from the 22nd to the 4th. Staff return on the 4th, students on the 5th. And then we do have those dates in the winter where no activities are allowed from the 23rd through the 26th. So that's it.
And we do have two new students, and we did catch wind of two additional students.
Oh.
I met in the grocery store, the family that had given a tour earlier this year, and they will be enrolling next week. So that'll be a total of 5 new students since our child count date.
Just one quick question, Katie.
Yep.
On that internship, if
Yes.
there is local businesses in town that want to partake in that, is that an option for them?
Yeah, so the Department of Labor will work with those students to figure out what they're interested in doing, and from there, they will seek the employers.
Okay,
So at this point, it's not like we want a bunch of
Sure,
people calling
sure,
and
sure.
saying,
Okay.
hey, give us your kids.
okay,
We wanna see what those students are interested in
Okay.
and get them some, you know, it kinda just allows them to have some work experience and something they might be interested in, so that way they can decide whether that's something they want to pursue or not, kind of giving them that background knowledge before they jump into it and decide that they don't like it.
okay.
Is that still kind of like a world work program?
Kind of like that, yeah, yep. Now, this does allow you, it does allow you to have a paid or an unpaid internship, so it does kind of allow that piece as well, so.
Any other questions? Thank you, Katie. Dick?
Yeah, so the lights that we have pulled out and replaced, we put those on Purple Wave auction site, and they have sold. So the lot of 52 lights, these were one of the lots of the gymnasium lights, sold for $687.50. The second lot of gymnasium lots, that's a lot of 20 lights, sold for $385, and then that's the good news. The bad news is the last lot of lights was the biggest, and that was 54. Those are the classroom lights, and that sold for $11. So they sold.
Smaller lots sell better, lesson learned.
No, it could be that, but we had the lot of 52 that sold for $687. So I think the reason was I think those two gymnasium lights would make better shop lights, and that's probably why that went for a higher dollar figure. But a total of $1,083.50 for all of them. So I believe they had 15 days. I mean, you guys have used Purple Wave, but I think they have 15 days to contact us and come pick up the lights that they purchased. So we'll get those moving and out of here in the very near future. We did hear from the Athletic Association, the Wrestling Co-op ADMs. You're going to hear a lot about ADMs tonight. So we're going to be talking about that pretty extensively later as well. But We did hear that the wrestling co-op is gonna, with our ADMs, is gonna push us to a total of 250 ADMs for next year, so that will push us up into Class A. The cutoff for Class A will be 225 ADMs. Out of that breakdown, Marion's got 43 ADMs, Freeman Public 64, Freeman Academy 27, Canastota 57, and Menlo 59. Just something that we're gonna wanna be conscious of as we continue these discussions with neighboring districts about potential co-ops. That's something we're gonna wanna continue to evaluate and decide if that's, if there's any areas that we can prevent from that moving from Class B to Class A. I have talked to Chris, and Chris said he's I won't put words in his mouth. Go ahead, Chris, you can come to the floor for a second and talk about it.
I don't care if we go Class A, but if we don't have to, I mean, don't do it. But, competition, we can compete with Class A guys, that's not an issue. But, I think we just need to wait to see how some things pan out, maybe later tonight and stuff like that, and make those decisions. And I'm just one person, so I mean, it's what all boards or all the schools decide to do. So, I think the best thing is to wait right now before we jump to any conclusions or make decisions right now. We got a little bit of time.
Christie, you have anything to add?
I would agree.
All right, some other items that I had, the governor had her budget, delivered her budget, her annual budget address, this last week, and she is proposing that there is a 6% increase for K-12 schools to be invested in teachers and other district staff, so that's very good news. 6% is a very high number in comparison to what past years have brought, so we're very fortunate that that's a number that's being thrown out there right now. Obviously, that is not final yet. If you'd like to see her presentation, please let me know. I can forward the presentation to you if you haven't had a chance to see that yet. And then the 2022 legislative session begins January 11th. So moving forward to hearing more about what the annual budget is going to bring. You may have noticed this, the main gym floor in the competition gym, or our main gym, you can see there's some spots and kind of like some valleys that are in that. And I've been meaning to call Dakota Floors for a while, and I got around to that last week and took some pictures of it and sent those off to them. They're gonna be sending a representative to come look at those, I call them grooves. It's like little channels and it's mainly in a certain area of the gym floor, kind of right when you go in the main entrance, or with the first entrance in about a third, maybe a little less than maybe an eighth of the floor. To that first section is where most of those marks are at. So they're gonna come in and take a look at it. When I sent them the pictures, they believe that the finish separated from the stain that was in the floor, and that's what caused that separation, created those channels. So I'll be working with them to find out ways that we can rectify that in the future to make sure that doesn't happen again, and then find out what's gonna happen to make it right, and whether that's compensation or whether they come in at some point and fix it. Whatever we work out, I'll make sure I keep the board informed on that. I spoke to Jeff McCormick from SPN today. The preliminary estimates for the softball complex will be sent out in the next few days here. Once those estimates, the preliminary estimates are sent out to us, they would like to schedule a meeting. The date that they would like to meet, and presumably with the Facilities and Grounds Committee, who we met with them the first time, would be January 5th or January 6th, and they would like to do early afternoon. Any feedback for Doug or Cody on times that would work best for your schedule, and you can let me know if you would like at a later date.
Yeah, I just did that.
Okay. Task force would be the next step. So tonight we're gonna talk about the meetings that we had with our neighboring districts. And then this Wednesday, we're scheduling a task force meeting, bring our whole entire task force back together and present to them what our discussions were with our meetings with our 3 neighboring districts, and make sure that they have an opportunity to be part of the conversation and part of the process. So that'll be scheduled for this Wednesday at 7 o'clock. And the final item, I would like to wish all the board members and your families a happy holidays.
Same to you. Any questions? Thank you, Jake. Unfinished business. Anybody have any? right, new business, school board task force report.
I'll kick that one off since Emily's not here.
Okay.
Over the past couple of weeks, we met with representatives from Canastota, their school board, their superintendent, Freeman Academy, and Marion. All meetings were overwhelmingly positive. Obviously, there's going to be an action taken in Canastota tonight, whether the football club continues or not. So we are awaiting those results before we make any decisions. But the Freeman Academy meeting is very positive. As part of the co-op's goals, I guess you should say, we really wanted to focus on, number one, all sports co-op, if that was a possibility, and then things beyond sports, which the response from Marion and Freeman Academy was very positive, that they would look at other things that they can offer that we don't, things that we offer that they don't, that they would be interested in. So I think both meetings went extremely well. Marion was very forthcoming that they had been meeting, or they'd had one meeting with Parker, which was very much like our initial meeting with Marion, kind of feel each other out, make sure that we have common goals in mind. So we told them that once the task force had a chance to reconvene and speak more after the vote with Canastota, then we would get back together and pursue things. But for now, very positive. We'll go through the ADMs, but obviously those decisions are going to affect our sports classifications. In any scenario that we co-op with any school, in any other sport other than football, we would be moving in class, just based on our ADM, whether it be Freeman Academy or Freeman Academy of Marion, that jump would happen to Class A, because the cutoff is 86, and we would move well beyond that. In the football scenario, if we would happen, if the co-op would happen to be dissolved tonight, it looks like, and you can't be positive of this until the state will make the determination, but it appears that if we co-op with Marion or Marion and Freeman Academy, that we would still remain Class A for a period of 2 years, based on the ADMs and based on the formula they use with the smallest school, only counting towards 20% of that ADM. So it appears that we could possibly remain 9-man if we were not to be affiliated with Kansas.
You said 9A or 9AA?
It would be 9AA. We would be the highest class in 9-man, probably the largest school in 9-man.
There may only be 2 9-man.
There, okay,
I would guess there'll be 2.
That's gonna happen.
Split them down the middle.
So that we don't know for sure, and we're prepared to react to whatever decision is made elsewhere tonight. But our initial meetings, I felt went very well. I was very happy with how they went. I believe that both Marion and the Freeman Academy representatives had nothing but the best intentions, and were very positive in wanting to explore a relationship further.
So part of the agenda, if people at home want to see these documents, my goal for this is to be 100% transparent, so people know what the numbers are and they can do their own figuring on their own. But just walking through some of the documents that are linked on the agenda, the application for sports cooperative deadlines, that's something that has been discussed. Football will be the earliest, and that will be in January. And we've talked to Shane McIntosh, reached out to the Athletic Association and asked if that's a hard line, because that January meeting would be their executive meeting, but they would need to know if there's any new sports cooperatives that are forming. So he reached out to them, they said it's not necessarily a hard line, but there is a lot of planning that will go into if something were to happen tonight where our current co-op dissolves and we pursue another sports cooperative. There's a lot of planning that would need to go into that, so we would need to act very fast. Our agenda, our timeline would be very short if it does come down to that, but I feel confident that we're in a good place. And we started this process early enough to where I feel like Freeman Public is in a very good spot to where we've had conversations and we're in a position where we have the ability to make that happen in a short period of time. And then it shows the breakdown of volleyball, basketball, soccer, and all the other sports that are available, and the timelines from April to June to November to March. And that spells out to us that we would have a little bit more cushion, a little bit more time. The number one urgency would be to decide what's going to happen with the football co-op. But if we are looking to expand on that, or form a new sports cooperative. I imagine all the other sports would fall into place nicely once we get those discussions underway. So that's the first document that's in your packet. Second document, and the one that's also linked onto the agenda, would be the ADMs. So this is the 9 through 11 ADMs, and that's what's used for members of the public that maybe are not aware of this. These are what are used to determine sports classifications. So that's a big one to look at, with an exception of football. Football is the only sport that the ADMs for males are the only number that are used. Every other sport, it's the ADMs for both males and females, and then you would add up the number of ADMs for each team that we would be looking at forming, each school that we'd be looking at forming a cooperative with. So the first one would be the 9 through 11 ADMs listed by school. Canastota is at 57. I highlighted all the schools that we've had conversations with. Second page, Freeman Academy High School is at 27. Freeman High School Public is at 65. And Marion is at 43. Once again, for the 9 through 11 ADMs. Next one would be a document that's also linked in the agenda, would be the 9 through 11 ADMs for males only. And that would show that Canastota would be at 35, Academy would be at 17, Public would be at 26, and Marion would be at 24. So with those numbers, what I included in your packet, these two are not linked on the agenda, but these were documents that we used as discussion points in our meetings with our neighboring districts. And then I put 3 districts, 3 schools together to show what it would look like if we had multiple school cooperatives. The first page, this was put together by superintendents with our current enrollment numbers, so there is some slight variations. If you look at this in comparison to the 2 previous documents, there are some slight variations based off of how the state calculates the ADMs, and this was just our current enrollment, but it's still very accurate within one. Some are exactly the same, but most of them are within one ADM. What I think is most valuable when you look at the 3 school districts would be the 9 through 11 ADMs, the second table that's in the bottom of that sheet, and then the one on the back side of that page would be even more valuable, and that's where you look at the total 9 through 12 ADMs for all 3 schools together. The first document is highlighted with Freeman Academy, and Marion, and that would put a total of 137 ADMs for boys and girls, and put us at 66 ADMs for the boys. And the cutoff for football is 60, drawing a blank right now, 56, but with that 68 for the boys, we also gotta take into account what Doug had mentioned earlier with the 20%, so it doesn't, if you have, like in Freeman Academy's case, if they had 1 athlete, we would take 20% for that 1 athlete of their male ADMs, which would drop that number to a point where it would be very, very close to being right at, and the preliminary calculations would be that we would be exactly spot on that number of the 56, so it would be really, really tight for that one if those 3 schools were all considering coming together for a sports cooperative. The next document has Freeman School District, Canastota, and Marion together, and this was something that was asked, that was discussed in our meeting with Canastota and what those numbers would look like, so I put that together based off of that information, and then I added Academy in as well. So with the 9 through 12 would be 81 girls, 83 boys, and 164 boys and girls together for the total 9 through 11 ADMs for those 3 schools. And then if we throw in the 10 girls and the 18 boys, that would be under the Academy's 9 through 11 ADMs. We put the girls at 91, the boys at 101 for 4 schools now, and the boys and girls together for a total ADMs of 192. So those are the numbers broken down to give you an idea of what you need to look at, and some of the rules that go into configuring the ADMs. Then the next sheet is what you would look at to determine what classifications we would then fall into based off those numbers, and the highlights for each sport with the basketball, cross-country, track, and volleyball, it's a big jump, you know, once you get to Class A, at the 90 to 449 or 450 ADMs, that's a big area, so once you go, if we were to bump up to Class A, we got a lot of cushion, before it would put us anywhere near moving up to AA. And then you got the football, that 56 is that hard number, and all the other ones are, you know, a little bit, I guess I would view them as softer by not being as concrete, so, once you get to 11-man, if you go over that 56, under that 11-man, like Christie had said, likely gonna be 2 9-man classes, but it's, so it'd be what do you think, the top half, is that what they would do for 9-man then, since they're broken down into 3 classes and third, just cut it in half even?
We're just cutting it out.
So that would be the breakdown for football, and then like I mentioned earlier, that cutoff for wrestling would be that 224. Keep in mind that we would include every school's ADMs for wrestling that we have that are part of the cooperative. All those are things that we wanna take into account as we continue to have these meetings and discussions going forward. I'll turn it over to the board. Any comments or discussion?
It's a lot of information. And unfortunately, we don't, basically all of it, we don't really know any of it until.
Yeah, kind of just pause button for
Yeah, like.
a day or two.
I could ask questions, but like, you might not know all the.
It'll be
Yeah,
updated
yeah.
information soon.
Right. But yeah, thanks. As far as the wrestling, like, not mentioning not wanting, possibly wanting to go to Class A, do all the schools provide a pretty decent number of kids?
Right now, Marion and Freeman provide the most. Menno has a couple. Freeman Academy won't have anybody after this year. So that's, that is something also to look at. Canastota, I would have more, but they don't provide any transportation or anything for their athletes.
With Menno, I know they wanted to go with the Jim River Trapper thing, they don't have interest, they don't wanna go with Scotland as far as wrestling, or Scotland doesn't have a program anymore?
Scotland goes with Bonham,
Okay.
so I think if anything would happen with Jim River, they'd probably dissolve that co-op, with Bonham, I would assume, I guess I don't know for sure, but right now, Scotland wrestlers go with Bonham and Avon.
Okay.
And one thing I forgot to mention too is like, if we go to Class A, there's gonna be a lot more travel, plain and simple. Because I'm gonna have to go and wrestle Rapid City, Sturgis, Spearfish, Pier, Watertown, towns like, schools like that, so.
And then you're talking like, so Saturday they were talking, we went to a basketball tournament, they were talking, weigh-ins were at 4:45 in Gregory, and so.
Freeman.
And then, so like, what time do you leave? Like, so I mean, like, are we talking overnights then, basically?
Yeah,
I mean,
right, because if we're traveling out to Rapid City or traveling to Spearfish, Sturgis, that's a tough day trip.
Right.
We have one overnight trip this year, just because I was able to put 2 events into one weekend where we wrestle in Presho one night and Stanley County the next morning. Get 2 weigh-ins done in 2 days. And, we don't have school on Friday, so at least the Freeman kids aren't missing school or anything like that, but yeah, there would definitely be overnight trips for wrestling.
Have the schools in the co-op consistently not had any participants?
Everybody's had somebody, but next year, if things stay true right now, Freeman Academy won't. And I think they have 1 kid in the youth program, and he's like a 1st grader.
And then Canastoga's number is gonna pick up where they will have kids in the program?
I'm losing kids from Canastota because Canastota won't provide any transportation to practices or to come over here for events. So like tomorrow, Amber's gonna take off work for an hour to go pick up the kid in Canastota that I do have out, pick him up from school and bring him back here so we can get on the bus at 2:30. That's what I'm doing anything I can to get that kid to give him an opportunity to wrestle. It's unfortunate that they won't support it.
Is there any reason behind them?
They
Is
said they
it
don't
a
have any.
financial situation?
They said they don't have anybody to drive a vehicle. And I even offered to, if you get them to Marion, because they got out of school early, if they can drive into Marion and get on the Marion school bus, and the parent, would, you know, get them back to Marion, the parent would pick them up in Marion. No, we can't, they said they can't drive them to Marion.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, then thank you to the task force, for the task force report. Facilities and Grounds Committee report.
That'd be me again.
Say I don't have everything, so Doug's got something.
The multipurpose room hangar project is set to bid tomorrow, 2 o'clock. There's been some activity. As far as I know, we're going to have some competition. There'll be at least 2 bidders, contract bidders, possibly 3. GLG issued an addendum that posted to some exchanges Friday, the others today, and bidders have been notified. So, market specifically, we've bid several school projects in the last 2 weeks, and I'm glad we're bidding before Christmas because the market's been a little bit crazy, and prices are definitely climbing, and everybody's thinking of inflation, especially for next year, but I'm hopeful that it's near or under what we projected for a budget, and I think we're gonna get a good action. So the bid opening is open to the public. It'll be here at 2 p.m. Jake and Debbie will be conducting the opening. I believe Catherine from GLG will also be here. So based on that, typically we would take a few days to vet the 2 bidders, maybe canvass bidders with questions, make sure that, you know, they're, number one, they've posted the required documents, the bid bond, and then 2, if they're comfortable with their bid. And then based on the market right now, a lot of suppliers are only holding their quotes for 15 days. So we probably would be looking at scheduling a special meeting to approve bids, so they can lock in pricing and get contracts issued.
Any feedback on when that special meeting should happen?
Within 15 days.
I think that's probably something we could conduct via Zoom if we had to, because there'll be 1 agenda item and 1 action.
I'm sure I can give you days.
From personal experience, we definitely don't wanna push it too far, because when they say 15 days, they mean 15 days.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, thanks, Doug. Policy Review Committee.
You got anything before I?
No, go ahead. We didn't really meet this time, and so we just had a couple things to read through, so.
Yeah, things have been really busy with the meetings that were scheduled last week with the neighboring school districts. So we weren't able to meet as Policy Review Committee in person, but I sent out 2 policies that need our attention, that we need to keep moving forward. As far as the pillars go that we had talked about, where we were gonna take, you know, one section of the state model policy and review that 1 month at a time. That's got pushed back. So for this month, it'll just be these 2 policies that'll be the first readings. The first of those 2 policies will be the Title IX policy. Christy and I have met with Jill Holper from the Academy, and this is one that I reported on last month, that we're developing that partnership with the Academy to where we can lean on each other for support with our Title IX policies, and that will be for the investigator side of things. With the investigator, the policy is very firm, and the expectations for us to put in our policy is very firm, that there's no conflicts of interest for the investigator, which means there cannot be any known connections with anybody that's involved in that investigation, or part of that situation for that matter. We are a small town, and there's still lots of connections, but it does certainly help to minimize the number of connections, and if we have somebody that's from the other school that's performing that investigation. So that's primarily the way that we're gonna partner, but this is a breakdown of the policy that the Academy is a little bit further ahead than we are in this process. So thankfully they share the policy, and being that we have an investigator that's gonna be crossing over from district to district, we wanna make sure that the policies are very similar. Didn't make much much sense for us to have a completely different policy and then an investigator from the academy coming over and having to learn our policy on top of their own policy. So we wanted to mirror the policy that was already in place as much as possible. They did a very nice job. Jill did a really nice job of putting this policy together. We've taken it and made it Freeman public, and so that would be what's available for you for the first reading of the Title IX policy. Second, this will tie very closely to the next couple agenda items, will be the naming rights policy. I did some research and research primarily colleges in South Dakota that had naming rights policies in place. There were a couple of out-of-state high schools that I found some model policies as well. Took each of those and Emily and I in our weekly meetings discussed it, and then Emily put together, took pieces from each of the policies that we felt were policies that were good to have in place, and put that together to make up our naming rights policy. So this one will be very, very valuable as we move forward with the softball complex. The early indicators are that we're gonna need some help. That we have the $150,000 the city is earmarked for the project. Hopefully, tomorrow we'll get good news, like Doug said, and it'll be on or under budget for the hangar, and that would leave us $300,000 that would be additional that we had budgeted for that project. But it's gonna indicators are it's gonna take a fairly healthy amount additional from that. So wanted to make sure that this policy was in place. So if we do have any members of the community, any businesses that are looking at having their name tied to something here in Freeman, it's a great opportunity. If somebody has a relative that has passed and they'd like to honor them by having their name be part of the facility here at Freeman High School, that's something that they can have the opportunity to do. It's very detailed in the policy, the naming rights policy, that at any point in time it can be terminated by either side. So if somebody donates the money, they can decide at any point in time that they wanna take the name off of that facility. That obviously the dollars that were donated are non-refundable, but the name can be removed, and at any point in time, the school district can do the same. So it does protect both sides. If there were anything in the future that would cause any controversies with any names that were on facilities. So encourage the board to dive into this policy. I'm very hopeful that we can market this and we can get some large dollar figures from members of the community or businesses in the community that will help us in turn be able to produce a really nice softball and youth baseball complex. Any questions on the two policies?
All right. Thanks, Jake. So now we're gonna hold a discussion about the addition of girls softball as an activity beginning in the spring of '23.
Preliminary indication from the Athletic Association is that it would be a spring sport for softball. The spring of 2023 is what they're gonna propose. I talked to Jill at the Athletic Association today, and she's the softball guru for the state, and she said that that's what their proposal is gonna be, and they're going to present that at the January executive board meeting. And they're also gonna put together a survey for schools. She believes that the early indicators are that there'll be a Class A, Class B, Class A, and then they're hopeful that they can form a Class AA as well. She said she wasn't sure what AA that would fall in the spring or if that would fall in the fall, but it is they're pretty confident that the Class B and Class A softball classes would fall as a spring season starting the spring of 2023. When we're talking the complex and when we're talking the timelines, we have a very aggressive timeline for this. We figure if we have a facility that we're gonna be putting together for girls to be playable in the spring of 2023, that means that this thing has to be in mature grass if we go with grass, mature grass before the frost of this next year. And that makes things pretty tight when we're talking, that we would have to, you know, do the dirt work that we're anticipating that we would have to do, put in, you know, any fencing, the concession stand, you know, all this lights, the whole complex, that's something we need to, really make sure that that's something that we desire to be part of. Have softball be a sanctioned sport in 2023. We really need to make sure that we're continuing and progressing with our planning. So that's the main purpose for this being an agenda item. If this, you know, is not going to be something that we're looking at and going into right away, maybe it's the next year, or maybe it's, you know, that we don't as a board want to have softball as a school sanctioned activity. It takes a little bit of the pressure off. They still can be used for summer rec, you know, fields in the summer months. We can still use this complex for physical education classes. We could use it for, you know, if we do end up getting turf, it can be used for a football practice. There's no lines, but you can always put out cones, and so you can use it for multiple reasons. I just wanted the board to have an opportunity to provide input on whether we feel that we're heading that direction of the school sanctioned sport or not.
Amber coached a junior high team essentially, right? And they would basically be the high schoolers at that point? For the most part, kind of? right?
Moving in that direction.
Well, yeah.
It'd be a young high
I mean, so
school.
we'd have, so there was interest, I don't remember.
There could be interest in the older girls too.
Oh, for sure.
That would want to play.
There
So, I
would
mean, yeah.
Do we have an idea of numbers?
I'm trying to remember how many
Participation.
girls were on that team, but that was also,
But she had married girls, so.
correct, we were together with Marion on that, just like we
But-
were for
but-
the summer.
That was this fall too, right?
She had 15
Correct.
girls.
Yeah, I think the
What's that,
lion's share.
15 or
was-
16 she had. 15 or 16 she had.
Because that would be a
I
couple
think,
of
yeah, I think
questions.
you're correct on that.
Were you giving any indication if the ADMs for classification would follow?
I don't believe that they have said any ADMs for softball yet.
Because I would be
for
interested in
classes.
knowing, number one, what our numbers would be, and how it being in the spring would affect those numbers. If there's a way to find out how many of the girls that would play softball also participate in track and golf, and if they're able to do both. Because I would hate to go full bore sanctioning a sport and then get there and not have enough field team. Which obviously then, based on what direction these co-op talks goes, that will greatly affect that.
Put out-
I did
Put
ask
out
that
a survey
question.
to the kids, to the girls.
I did ask that question today, and they felt that the athletic association, that the girls would have the ability to very easily compete in track and softball.
I mean, our summer rec, how many girls do we have in softball? It's over 127, something like that. It's probably the most popular sport in Freeman right now. So I don't see any issue fielding a team at all times, over the next 10 years at least.
If we weren't able to get the complex put together quite that quickly, is the field in town accepted as a playable surface?
I would think so.
It
I
would,
would think they would have to do a little bit of work to it too.
there's some infield work that would have to be
Because that
done.
would be my worry is, you know, even if we saw it in the outfield, it might not be 100% ready, so
Correct.
if we weren't able to play spring of
As far
23
as
here.
lengthwise or distance-wise for fencing, I think all that would be,
Yeah.
would be in compliance there.
So we do have kind of a plan B.
We would just need to do some dirt work on the infield probably around pitcher's mound to get that.
Pitchers
moving.
and home base would need,
Yeah.
second base is a big deal. I mean, it'd have to be all be leveled out. It's,
Yeah,
I mean,
it would take some work, but I think.
you'd have to pull all the bases and redo all of them.
I think that money would be best spent expediting the new fields. I mean, if it's feasible to get it all done, and if we're all on the same page, I don't really see any reason to drag our feet on it. I mean, yeah, if things go terribly wrong and we have to do that as a plan B, that's fine, but if we're all on the same page and wanna go through, I don't see any reason to drag feet. Might as well just get it all done, figure out where we get the money from, and go full bore. Because, yeah, the participation, I have zero hesitancy with thinking that's gonna be easy to fill, so, yeah, we'll be fine there.
assumption that we're gonna find the money. That's the biggest hurdle we have to cross.
Yep.
I think the desire's there from everybody to get it done. We've obviously got the kids that wanna play, so.
Just a rough guess, Jake, with the money provided by the city and then the school, does that put us about half where we need to be, a third? What are we
I
thinking?
think in preliminary, if we staged in a couple items. So if we staged in the lights are pretty expensive. If we staged in the concession stand, that would put us pretty close to halfway. Would you say, Doug?
I would, Hamlin, Paint Eye, there's concessions stand that been up there last week, similar to what we would be looking at, $155,000. That's a big chunk of budget.
Can't you just use the football field?
Yeah, the football field sounds
Concession
pretty
stand.
good.
I mean, honestly, we already have a concession stand
Yeah.
I mean,
100 yards away, just use that.
Big part of the budget, lights are.
Yeah, no, I get it, I'm just saying, like, you might have to walk an extra 50 feet, but we don't have to spend $150,000. I'm okay with that.
And part of the preliminary design was that there'd be a nice little walking path headed that direction for that reason. If we needed to.
I think that would suffice.
We're gonna have to look at, and honestly, my perspective, especially being involved in projects where there's fundraising, if you get something in place, it makes it that much easier to raise money for the rest of the project, so.
So that's a good point, Slade, that we are about somewhere in that ballpark of halfway to a little bit less than halfway to our target goal. So if you know anybody that is interested, I feel like we're in a position now where we have our checks and balances here as a district where we're ready to start accepting money. We have the ability with the next, one of the next agenda items for the recognition for donation form that's in place. We've talked to our auditors, we know where that money should be housed. So we know what needs to be done as far as the financial side of it, and we're prepared to start accepting donations. So if you know any community members that are interested, or know anybody that's interested in having their name on a facility, obviously part of the policy would be that we would have a committee that would review that and vet, make sure everything is kosher and is going to represent the district well and represent the families that are making the donation well. So I feel like that's all in place, so now we gotta go out and find them.
All right, well, then we might as well talk about the Southpaw facility fundraiser plan.
Yeah, and that pretty much was
Is
it.
it?
I did link the donation form, and I also put it in your packet. So this would be something that, if anybody has a donation that would be, outside of the naming rights for it, just, even a $100, $200, $1,000, whatever dollar figure that people are comfortable with, and they'd like to provide that, a donation and help us out, they can fill out the top portion of this form, and they would bring that into our business office, and we would ultimately put that as a consent agenda item. It would be recognized by the board. We would have that highlighted at the bottom, and then a copy of this form would go back to the families that are making a donation for tax deductible purposes. So this would be their proof that the donation took place, and they can help to benefit them come tax season. So this document is in place, and then next month, once we look at the second reading from the naming rights facility, or naming rights of the facility, and those are two key documents that we need to have in place to reach that target number. So I think we're getting close.
All right, then an update from the Delegate Assembly meeting.
I went to Pier a few weeks ago. Most of it was just verbiage being changed, changing things from should to shall, things like that. Just a lot of bureaucratic crossing of T's and dotting of I's. So nothing too crazy happened while I was there. Like I said, it was just a lot of bookkeeping that needed to be done, and that's what was taken care of. So that's the report for that.
Awesome, thanks for going.
Yeah, thanks
Bet.
for doing that.
We need to appoint board member or members to the Associated School Board SD Legislative Action Network.
they talked to Emily tonight, and she said she would be willing to be one representative. What makes up the ASBSD Legislative Action Network sounds, like it would tie very closely with the Delegate Assembly, or at least similar conversations. They recommend that we have one or two board members that would be part of this, just so you have a backup in case one can't make it. And the difference between the Legislative Action Network, or the LAN, would be that these meetings are done electronically, so there's no travel, so you don't have to spend 6 hours in the car for an hour-long meeting. It's like,
Yep.
so that's a major advantage for that. So Emily said she would be one individual that would be part of the two board members that would represent the district for this committee. We just need to nominate them, or name another one. Any interest?
So I don't know, maybe you did talk to Emily. She called me this afternoon and asked if I'd be the second delegate, and I agreed to it, so as long as that's okay with everybody else, I guess that would be fine with me.
Very good.
All right, then the board needs to have a discussion about staff feedback meetings.
Emily and I had breakfast meetings, and 3 of them, and Emily did a fantastic job of putting together an awesome breakfast. We had about 25 total staff members that represent teachers and support staff that came in and joined us throughout the 3 meetings, and just very casual, but had a round table, was held right here in the library, and circled the tables, and we just, Emily led the meetings, and just said, hey, she's new as a board chair, we have a new superintendent, we're not always in positions where we can sit down and have casual conversations, and she has shared that we're looking for feedback, how can we improve as a district, and some of the things that were presented at each of the meetings, actually, it was brought up at all 3 of them, was staffing at the elementary, and that our numbers, the class sizes at the elementary, as we know, are getting very, very large in those elementary classrooms, and that led to some conversations about what would it look like, should we split a section, for example, kindergarten, that's at 31 students right now. If we were to split that, we've taken the Band-Aid approach by adding adults in there, adding instructional aides to offset those high numbers, but if next year, if we made a decision to split that, what would that look like as far as the layout? Because we would need, obviously, another classroom, so starting to develop what that plan looks like. I tasked, after that meeting, I asked Shane to start putting together a plan for what that could look like. He's got a staff meeting tomorrow morning, so he's gonna be gathering some feedback from the elementary staff, for two different plans. And then eventually, Shane will be bringing that to the board and have a couple of different options that the board can choose from. So that's stuff that's in the works because of that feedback meeting. Another area that was discussed as a frustration for staff would be having the level of EL support that our EL students deserve and that they need. And right now, they feel like they're just not able to provide the support that our students need. So because of that feedback, we've looked at adjusting some things for second semester as far as some EL supports. Trying to work out a schedule. I look at Katie, because really Katie is the one that's working out the schedule, and trying to create an opportunity where we can have some of our EL students be in a classroom with 2 teachers, a language arts teacher and a teacher that can provide that language support that they need. And then those 2 teachers can work with each other, and more importantly, work with our students and give them the help that they need, accelerate their English speaking skills, and then also still earn credits that they need that would eventually lead towards graduation credits. So because of that discussion, that's helped us to have discussions on how we can improve our system. So that was great feedback from our staff. And then also the third item that came up in each of the 3 meetings was the need for more special education support. That we were in a position where we had a position posted. We were not able to have an applicant for that position, so we had to go in-house and have Rebecca Hofer cover the whole entire district. So she is our, basically our K through 12 special ed teacher. We still have the autism room and some other special ed supports, but primarily she's handling all our LD population of students that are through the
ahead, so we would require a motion to post for a full-time certified special education teacher for the junior, senior high school.
I think we skipped agenda item 10.
Did I skip it?
Yeah, so 10 would be the discussion about.
Oh, sorry, well, we were gonna have that, sorry.
How many schools does she handle district-wide?
What's her high school caseload, you know?
It's our county.
And I wouldn't say it's as much the caseload as it is trying to manage the paperwork side of things. And we have had a couple situations where we have students that come to the district and have to, the process of converting that paperwork over is an exhausting process. Just keeping up with the paperwork for students that have been in the district is challenging enough. Then when you have a student coming from outside the district or potentially out of state, that creates even more headaches and challenges. But I would say that's the part that for any special ed teacher that is the most exhausting. So managing the whole entire paperwork load for K through 12 would be something that just alleviating some of those pressures would be really valuable.
I'm assuming since we just had one budget-wise, that's not in, that we are fine as far as that goes.
Yeah, it's budgeted, for this position, we just weren't able to fill it.
Okay.
So it's just a matter of whether the board wants to try to post and for this position and try to fill it again. Is there a likelihood? It's hard to say. Special ed is it's a position that is very highly sought after. I looked at the Canastota board agenda tonight, and I see that they're going to be posting for a special ed position as well, so.
What percentage of the workload of that position is paperwork?
I think it's seasonal with the paperwork as well. Certain times of the year where you typically have your, for whatever reason, you just get an influx of the number of IEPs that are coming due. But ideally, you want to stay on top of the paperwork, but then you want to expand upon the programming and the teaching that's happening in the classroom. And I just don't think they can get on top of the paperwork to be able to meet the needs with our current staffing and what the classroom needs are.
I guess my question is leading to, would that be something we could fill with a secretarial role as opposed to a teacher? That's a really tough teaching position to fill. It probably wouldn't be as tough of a secretarial position to fill. And if the majority of it's paperwork anyway,
Do they have to be certified staff to do the paperwork?
Yeah, I have seen districts that have had FTEs that have like a full-time licensed teacher that has been a sped coordinator type of position or an assessment person where their number one responsibility is that they do all the assessments for any student that is due. So like year 3 when they're due for the assessment for the 3-year evaluation meeting, I think that would be part of the responsibilities for that person. I have not seen to where a secretary has been responsible for that. So I can't answer that question right now, but it's certainly something we could look into. I don't know if that would help us in this situation, just because I think there's, the classroom needs K through 12, that would, that's challenging as well. Trying to make sure that you're in the classrooms, that you're, in some cases doing a pull-out math class where they would come to the resource room and receive direct instruction from the case manager. Just being able to juggle all that, I think it'd be definitely, I see it be the best option to be able to find another FTE, have one at high school and one at the elementary.
I agree. If we can't find that, you have to make lemonade out of lemons. And obviously this is a very difficult position to fill, not just here, but in other districts as well.
Yep.
So going back to that plan B, what else could we, or who else could we use that would be as helpful as possible without being that specific position?
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's something that maybe we can bring to our cabinet meetings and discuss. Should we not, if we're not able to find an applicant, what would be our backup plan?
Yeah, but for the time being, I feel that we should advertise for a full-time.
Oh, absolutely. It's been really tough to fill.
Sure.
I'm not optimistic that it's gonna be.
If we were able to fill the position, how many pairs would that free up to handle substitute duties? We don't know.
Here.
Yeah, right now our pairs are really helping us pick up the slack. They're doing a nice job.
We have a lot of one-on-one, and we also, I mean, it's easy when you have several students in the same classroom, right, so you have that one pair, but that's not really the case either, so we're working short with paras also. I don't think it would free up any necessarily.
From my perspective, if we had the ideal setup, we would have paraprofessionals that are the right amount of paraprofessionals that can go into the classroom, that can be pushed in with the students and can provide the support in the classroom. And then we would have the case manager that would be able to pull kids out in certain situations if that's what's the best fit for that student and provide more one-on-one instruction. And sometimes that pull out with the case manager, sometimes that's a full pull-out, or it's a full classroom with a record as a special ed teacher. And in other cases, it's their mainstreamed in a math class for the first 25 minutes of the period, and then the rest of the period, they come out and they get additional one-on-one support with the case manager in a more private setting where they can get a little bit more one-on-one attention. So that, I believe, would be the best scenario, having the case managers focusing on teaching and the paras being in the classroom providing instructional support for the regular education teachers.
I think the hope right now would be to catch up, maybe a December grad.
If that exists.
Right.
But we don't know unless we try.
Right, so, in listening, I would entertain a motion to post for a full-time certified special education teacher to hire, and if we have, and then you guys look into something else if that's suitable. So if somebody would like to make that motion.
I will make that motion.
Cody, do I have a motion by Cody, do I have a second?
Yes.
And a second by Doug. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. All right, then we have a review of the 2021-2022 safe return in-person learning and continued learning and,
Continuity.
thank you, plan.
I think
You could have let me struggle through that, I would have done it a few times and you all would have got a laugh, so.
this is a requirement by the state that we, every 6 months, we review the safe return and learning continuity plan. On this plan, everything is the same as what we presented this summer when we first generated this plan, except for the highlighted portions. Page 6 at the top paragraph. Would be an addition. So in that paragraph, that would be, the addition would be, now that we're getting to the point where the vaccine is available for students, if a student is fully vaccinated and they are a close contact, that with that vaccination, as long as they don't show symptoms, that they would be able to come to school, they would not be in a position where they would have to quarantine. And then same thing would go for staff as well. In addition, this third paragraph down on page 6, another addition that came into play was this, we originally made the decision that we were not going to test kids at school, but then the state, I became aware that the state had take-home kits that we could send home with the families, so I adjusted the plan to read that if, we won't, as a school district, we're not gonna play, like, or pretend like we're medical professionals, but we will let parents, if they have the ability to, or if they have the desire to, we will provide a take-home kit that the parents can provide the take-home test for their child if they so wish. That was added, page 7. This was language that was added based off of our ESSER 3, ARP ESSER 3 budget plan. It just made sense to add this. It was language that we put in the ESSER 3 budget, so it made sense to add that language to our safe return to in-person learning plan as well. So that was just to connect the two plans. page 8. This was something that was a requirement that we were missing in the original plan. That was to form a committee that would review, that would be part of the people responsibility for reviewing this plan. So the last page then would be the individuals that we had representing the district. So we had 8 individuals that read through this plan, provided feedback for us, and had a say in the adjustments that we made to our plan for this time around. So the state's requirements, we have to have the committee that reviewed the plan, we have to hold a discussion, and then we have to also allow the public an opportunity to provide input on the plan.
Just a
And then
question,
approve the adjustments.
just a question, not directly related to this, but with the changes due to the ESSER funding, have you received any new criteria on ESSER funds? I know some districts have, but I believe that's because they're using funding for specific things. Have you
Mainly
done any
building
updates?
projects,
Yeah.
that's been a real.
So I know they've
headache, so.
started to write new criteria. Have we received anything?
We haven't, it's gone to the finance committee, so our budget was approved, but it's now, the next step would be at the finance committee, and we have not received any funds from the ESSER 3 budget yet,
Okay.
but I would imagine that.
Because I heard that one of the
future we
things
should
that
be
they were going to be writing specific criteria on was transportation, which we were planning on using some of those funds for a bus, so.
Yes.
I'm just curious if we've seen anything.
No, I have not heard anything, it hasn't been on any of the weekly superintendent budgets for ESSER 3 budget plans at all. But I have heard just from discussions from neighboring superintendents that they had any kind of a building project in place that's been very complicated.
Okay. All right, so then now we have to open it up for any public input for the 6-month review. Am I reading that right?
Correct.
You're the public. You guys are the public, so. Any input?
A third of our audience is on the review committee.
I read it, I thought it looked fine.
It's conflict of interest.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so then we would require a motion to approve the 6-month review and safe return in-person learning and continuing plan with the new amendment.
I assume we'll be reviewing this again in 6 months.
Yes.
Perfect. I'll make that motion.
Motion by Slade,
Second.
second by Doug. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We're going to go.
I have one update, I just wanna make it, we owe it to the public, to make sure that the public's aware that, I did receive information that came from it and made the decision to dissolve the co-op this evening, so. I look forward to what's next for Freeman Public, and I think when one door closes, another door opens, and I'm excited for the opportunities that we have moving forward. So very excited to have conversations with the districts that we've met with and that have shown interest in being part of the cooperative with us.
All right, that takes us to executive session. We need a motion to enter executive session for the purpose of SDCL 1-25-2, parentheses 1. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Doug, second
So moved.
by Cody. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are in executive session at